A king without a crown breathes heavy in the dark, his sandals slipping on the loose limestone of the Judean wilderness. Most people assume Psalm 63 is a poetic guide to starting your day off right. It has been turned into the ultimate proof text. He has to hold on, and the specific Hebrew word he uses to describe his grip will change the entire landscape of the psalm. Look at verse 8. My soul clings to you. Your right hand upholds me. The English translation sounds affectionate. It sounds delicate. It sounds like a child lightly holding a mother's coat. But the Hebrew is violent. The word is dabak. It means to adhere, to weld, to fuse two objects together under extreme physical pressure. It appears across the Old Testament to describe things that cannot be separated without tearing tissue. In the book of Genesis, it describes a man welded to his wife. In the book of Deuteronomy, it describes a fatal disease clinging to human skin. In the book of Joshua, it describes an army aggressively overtaking an enemy from behind. But the most visceral use of dabak happens in the book of 2 Samuel. A warrior named Eleazar stands in a field of barley. The Philistines attack. The Israelite army retreats. Eleazar stands alone. He fights until his muscles fail. He swings until his body gives out. The text says he fought so long and so hard that his hand dabak to his sword. The muscles cramp. The fingers freeze. The sweat dries and seals his palm to the cold metal hilt. His hand physically locks to the weapon for the 5 a.m. Christian devotional hour. But if you look closer, if you look at the dust on this man's skin, his men return to the field only to peel his rigid fingers from the iron. That is the word. That is the grip. David is not holding hands with the divine. He is locking his soul to God like a frozen hand to a heavy sword. His soul is experiencing dabak. The exhaustion is absolute. The adrenaline is gone. He is clamping down with the absolute last ounce of his strength. He cannot let go. Letting go means falling into the dark. Letting go means the wilderness wins. This is not religious devotion. It is sheer survival. Notice the second half of the verse. Your right hand upholds me. The fusion is mutual. David locks his grip on God. God locks his grip on David. The man holds on with the strength of his own desperation. The divine holds on with the strength of his right hand, the ancient cultural symbol of absolute, uncontested power. It is an unbreakable weld in the middle of the devastation. And David needs every ounce of that grip. Because as the night finally begins to break, the phantom sanctuary fades. The poetic meditation on his bed of dirt has to face the physical reality of the canyon. The sun is rising, and the men who want to bleed him out are waking up. The threat in the wilderness is not a metaphor. It has teeth. At the betrayal tearing his family apart. At the literal swords drawn to spill his blood on the canyon floor. The sun finally crests the eastern ridge, spilling harsh, blinding light across the devastation. The shadows stretch long and sharp over the limestone. The phantom sanctuary of the night watches dissolves, replaced by the blistering heat of the Judean desert. David is awake. His men are checking their weapons. The metallic slide of bronze against leather, breaking the dry silence of the canyon. The spiritual feast is over. Now, he must survive the hunting party. People read this chapter in their climate-controlled living rooms and skip right over the violence of the final stanzas. They want the poetic thirst of verse 1. But they ignore the bloody scavengers of verse 10. You cannot separate them. The intensity of David's worship is directly proportionate to the proximity of his death. In verse 9, the tone of the psalm violently shifts. The lyrical meditation on God's love snaps into the brutal, waking reality of an assassination plot. But those who seek to destroy my life shall go down into the depths of the earth. They shall be given over to the power of the sword. They shall be a portion for foxes. The English word foxes is too clean. The Hebrew word is shual, which most scholars recognize, in this context, as jackals, scavengers, the creatures that wait on the edge of the desert, smelling for blood in the wind. You start to see something the coffee mug reading completely misses. The English translation has sanitized a moment of raw, desperate violence. waiting to tear flesh from bone. In the ancient Near East, there is no curse more severe than remaining unburied. To be left on the battlefield for the wild dogs is the ultimate humiliation, an utter erasure of a man's name and honor from the earth. David is looking out at the wasteland, knowing that Absalom's forces are marching toward him with drawn swords, and he is predicting their absolute ruin. He is not writing a revenge fantasy. He is aligning himself with the inevitable gravity of divine justice. The men hunting him are heavily armed, well-rested, and financed by the royal treasury he just left behind. They have every tactical advantage. But David understands a fundamental law of the spiritual universe. Those who sever themselves from God's covering are already walking corpses. The men hunting him think they are the predators. But the wilderness has a way of turning predators into carrion. David knows that he does not need to draw his own weapon to win this war. He only needs to maintain his debak, his locked, desperate grip on the presence of God, while the men trying to kill him march blindly into their own graves. The physical swords of Absalom were buried in the dirt millennia ago, but the spiritual architecture of this desert survival song was never meant to stay in the ancient world. Because if we misunderstand David's desperation, we will misdiagnose our own. We will think we just need better habits, when what we actually need is a lifeline. You are probably not hiding in a limestone ravine. You are probably not listening for the sound of bronze swords dragging across rock. But you know the devastation. You know what it feels like when the geography of your life violently changes. It rarely looks like a physical desert. It looks like a sterile clinic room smelling of alcohol swabs and bad news. It looks like the cold blue glare of a phone screen at 3 in the morning when the text message shatters your family. It looks like a house that is suddenly, suffocatingly quiet. After the boxes are packed and the divorce is final, the wilderness always strips everything away. When the structures of our lives collapse, our immediate reflex is panic. We assume that because our comfort has evaporated, God has evacuated. We mistake the loss of our predictable routines for the absence of the divine. We want the palace back. We want the safety back. But the devastation is not a place of divine abandonment. It is a place of forced attachment. If you are in a season where the spiritual practices that used to sustain you feel completely hollow, you are not failing. You are being relocated. The familiar sanctuary is gone. The easy worship is gone. You are in the dark, and the night watches are terrifying. This is exactly where you must learn to shakar. You stop reading polite, pre-packaged morning devotionals. You start pleading for the literal breaking of the dawn. This psalm is not a morning devotional. It is a survival manual. David is not writing from a place of quiet reflection. You learn to hunt for the presence of God because you finally realize that your survival depends on it. The polite prayers of the palace do not work in the dirt. And this is where you learn the violence of dabak. When the emotional dehydration sets in, when you do not have the vocabulary to pray, when the anxiety sits in your chest, like a physical block of lead, you do not need a theology debate. You need a death grip. You lock your soul to the ancient promises like a cramping hand to a cold iron sword. You hold on until your fingers freeze. You let his right hand uphold you when your own adrenaline runs out. Your wilderness is not a punishment. It is a revelation of what you are actually anchored to. The most agonizing seasons of your life are the exact environments required to teach you how to feast in the dark. When you learn to reconstruct the phantom sanctuary in the middle of your own starvation, the things that are hunting you lose their power. The depression, the fear, the crushing weight of tomorrow, they become the scavengers that starve while you are fed. But this survival mechanism is not isolated to one king in one canyon. Because when you step back, he is writing from a place of starvation. He is not offering a polite morning greeting to the divine from the Judean desert. And look at the whole story. You realize David was just walking a path that had been carved long before him. The sun sets over the chalk cliffs of Jeshimon. An exiled king sits in the dust, his throat dry. His enemies closing in. He closes his eyes in the lethal dark, and he chooses to feast on a memory. That memory becomes a blueprint. A king fled into the devastation and the wilderness became a sanctuary. A man hunted for the breaking dawn and discovered a presence that outshines the sun. A starving body remembered the temple and tasted the marrow of an invisible feast. The terrifying silence of the night watches pressed in, and a soul metabolized a history the enemy could not steal. A exhausted grip locked onto God like a dying warrior to a sword, and the right hand of heaven clamped back. An assassination party marched into the canyon with drawn bronze and walked blindly into their own graves. A monarch was violently stripped of his crown, his city, and his safety, and found the only anchor that actually holds in the dark. Same desert, same survival song, one unbreakable grip. But maybe the part that stays with me most is that grip. He is bleeding out, spiritually and emotionally. And he is reaching for the only thing that can stop the hemorrhage. Not a delicate hold, not a polite morning routine over a warm cup of coffee. The debak, the visceral image of Eleazar, standing alone, in a barley field, fighting until his muscles fail and the sweat seals his hand to the cold metal of the sword. The realization that true worship in the wilderness isn't about having the strength to keep fighting. It is about simply refusing to let go. If you are in a season where your palace has collapsed and you are staring at a jagged wall of limestone, you do not need to pretend you are full. You do not need to fake the dawn. You only need to clamp down on the ancient promises with whatever exhausted strength you have left, and trust that the right hand of the divine is already holding you. And may the God who meets the starving in the wasteland walk with you through the devastation and feed you with a presence that outlasts the night. If this reached something in you, subscribe, leave a comment, even one word helps. Share this with someone who is currently walking through their own wilderness. Pray for us as we keep digging into these texts. When you realize what is actually happening in the desert of Judah, the polite veneer of this poem shatters. The words stop being pretty, they become dangerous. To feel the actual weight of what David is saying, the night air is cold, but his throat is burning. Behind him, miles back in Jerusalem. And to understand what it means for your own seasons of drought, you have to start with the dirt itself. You have to step into the wasteland where this song was born. And you have to unlearn the English translation of the very first line. The eastern edge of Jerusalem drops off into a geological nightmare. If you walk just a few miles east of the city, the rolling hills and olive groves suddenly vanish. The earth tears open into a labyrinth of jagged limestone ravines plummeting toward the Dead Sea. This is the wilderness of Judah. The ancient Hebrews called it Jeshimon, the devastation. It is a landscape of pale chalk and baked rock, where the summer temperatures routinely push past 110 degrees. And the air is so dry, it cracks the lips, before you even realize you are thirsty. There are no gentle streams here. There are only wadis deep, carved channels that stay bone dry for most of the year, mocking the traveler with the memory of water. This is where David is hiding. According to the historical accounts in the book of 2 Samuel, David is not here on a spiritual retreat. He is an aging monarch, fleeing for his life because his own flesh and blood, his son Absalom, has staged a violent military coup. His own son has stolen his throne. Somewhere out there in the ravines, armed men are hunting him like an animal. David has abandoned his palace in a panic, weeping as he walked barefoot up the Mount of Olives, before descending into the wasteland. To escape the executioner's sword, he is surrounded by a small band of loyalists, cut off from his supply lines, exhausted, and acutely aware that his kingdom is collapsing. This is the physical reality underneath verse 1. A dry and weary land where there is no water. Most readers spiritualize that line immediately. They assume David is merely using a poetic metaphor for feeling emotionally drained. But before it was a metaphor, it was a geographical fact. The sun is baking the canyon walls. His canteen is empty, and the dust is coating the back of his throat. The wilderness of Judah is not a metaphor for a bad day. It is a furnace designed to burn away everything that is not essential. When you strip a human being of their security, their status, and their basic physical needs, you find out exactly what they are anchored to. David has lost his family. He has lost his throne. He has lost access to the Ark of the Covenant, the localized presence of God in the capital city. Every external marker of his identity has been violently ripped away. And standing in the absolute center of that devastation, he opens his mouth to speak. He has no water, no shelter, and no guarantee he will survive to see the sun rise. The wilderness strips everything away. The English Bibles tell us, he says, "Early will I seek you." But if you go back to the original language, you discover that David is not talking about the hands on a clock. He is talking about the darkness, the breaking of the horizon, and the frantic grip of a man trying to stay alive. The wind bites at his skin. Limestone grit coats his teeth. He hears pebbles falling in the dry wadis below. Every sound is a potential sword. Every shadow is a potential assassin. The night is lethal. The canyon walls are invisible. David sits in the dirt. He watches the eastern ridge. He is waiting for the fracture of the blackness. And he whispers the words of verse 1, "O God, you are my God. Early will I seek you." The English word early implies an alarm clock. It implies a schedule. It implies you had a good night's sleep and decided to wake up. But the text does not say early. The text uses the Hebrew verb shachar. It is a primal word. It is a violent word. The root of shachar is the literal dawn, the physical breaking of light over the horizon, the exact second the sun tears the night open. To shachar is to seek for something at the first crack of morning. The palace is gone. The inner circle is gone. The illusion of control is gone. There is only the rock, the dark, and the crushing weight of betrayal. To hunt for it in the dark, to crave the sun because the night is trying to kill you. It appears in Isaiah chapter 8. The prophet warns of a coming terror. He calls it a darkness with no shachar, a night where the dawn simply refuses to arrive. A suffocating, endless black. That is the fear in David's chest. That is the weight of the wilderness. That root changes everything about this psalm. David is not waking up early to pray. He has been awake all night trying to survive. He is not scheduling a quiet time. He is pleading for the sun to rise. Shachar is not a polite morning routine. It is a desperate gasp for air. His kingdom is gone. His family is shattered. His life is measured in hours. And yet, looking into the terrifying dark, his priority is baffling. He does not ask for his throne back. He does not ask for his army to arrive. He does not ask for water. He asks for the dawn of God's presence. "My soul thirsts for you," he says. "My flesh faints for you." The word for faints or longs is kama. It appears exactly once in the entire Old Testament. Right here. A unique word for a unique agony. It means to grow pale from exhaustion, to go blind with longing. He is spiritually starving. He is emotionally dehydrated. He sits in the dirt and begins to compose a song. You have probably read the words he writes. He needs the divine presence like a dying man needs a river. But there is a massive problem. He is trapped in the devastation. The Ark of the Covenant, the localized presence of the divine, is miles away in a city he can no longer enter. He is physically cut off from the sanctuary. But memory is a powerful weapon in the dark. We often treat sacred spaces as fixed coordinates on a map. A cathedral, a familiar room, a specific building where the divine is supposed to be located and easily accessed. In the ancient Near East, deities were deeply territorial. A god belonged to a capital city, housed in a physical temple, bound to a specific piece of geography, and to leave the city boundaries was to leave the jurisdiction of the divine entirely. When David fled Jerusalem in a panic, he left the Ark of the Covenant behind. The gold-plated wooden box that held the localized presence of Yahweh remained in the hands of the son who wanted him dead. The geography of his faith had been violently stripped away. Yet, in verse 2 of this survival song, David writes, "So I have looked upon you in the sanctuary, beholding your power and glory." He is staring at a jagged wall of chalky limestone, You have likely seen them painted on coffee mugs, or printed over pastel landscapes on floral bookmarks. The wind hitting his face tastes like dry salt blowing up from the Dead Sea. This is not a man looking at a building. It is a man surviving on a phantom memory. He is projecting the majesty of the temple onto the desolate canyon floor. The wilderness forces a brutal but necessary realization about the nature of divine proximity, stripping away the illusion that God is tethered to the architecture of our comfortable seasons. When the structures collapse, the memory of the presence becomes the very thing that sustains the pulse. If the sheer disorientation of a wilderness season has ever made you feel like you lost your spiritual coordinates entirely, you're exactly who this channel is for. Drop a thought in the comments and hit subscribe, because every week we go deeper into the text to find the lifelines hidden in plain sight. So David builds a sanctuary in the dust. He aggressively summons the sensory memory of the temple. He remembers the thick, heavy smell of burning frankincense clinging to his clothes. He recalls the radiating heat of the sacrificial fires and the unshakable certainty of divine power echoing through the stone halls of the capital. The physical deprivation of the devastation is failing to break him, because his internal reality is anchored to an historical truth. He is teaching us the mechanics of spiritual endurance. O God, you are my God. Early will I seek you. It sounds peaceful. It sounds like the quiet discipline. When you cannot see the evidence of God in your current geography, you must ruthlessly enforce the memory of what he did in the past. The memory becomes a bridge over the current starvation. And as his mind reconstructs the Holy of Holies in the pitch black of the Judean desert, this phantom sanctuary begins to produce a profound reaction in his starving body. The intense deprivation suddenly gives way to a feast. But the meal only arrives when the night is at its absolute darkest. The ancient Hebrew night is divided into 3 watches. The first watch brings the cold. The second watch brings the silence. The third watch brings the terror. David lies on the canyon floor. The limestone bites into his spine. The wind howls through the jagged chalk, carrying the distant sound of scavenging jackals. He has no bed, no royal guards, and his stomach is twisting with hollow cramps. The physical starvation is setting in, and right here, in the dead center of the blackness. He writes, verse 5, "My soul will be satisfied as with fat and rich food, and my mouth will praise you with joyful lips, when I remember you upon my bed, and meditate on you in the watches of the night." The contrast is staggering. He has no bread. He has no meat. He has no fire to cook over. But he closes his eyes. Of a modern morning routine, a warm cup of coffee, a leather-bound Bible open on a mahogany desk, the gentle quiet before the world wakes up, and his mouth fills with the memory of marrow. The Hebrew words he uses, kalev and deshen, refer to the richest, most luxurious parts of a banquet. The fat, the oil, the heavy, dripping excess of a king's table, reserved only for the highest celebrations. He is describing a feast while shivering in the dirt. This is not a metaphor for positive thinking. It is a biological override. The memory of the divine is not a distraction from the starvation. It is the sustenance itself. As his body wastes away in the devastation, his inner architecture expands. The panic of the second watch tries to crush him, but the phantom sanctuary feeds him. He meditates. He murmurs the ancient promises. He lets the history of God's faithfulness coat his throat like warm oil. The Red Sea parting, the giant falling in the valley, the lion and the bear struck dead in the pasture. The night tries to strip him bare. The memory dresses him in armor. He survives hour by hour, watch by watch, because his soul is metabolizing a history his enemies cannot touch. They can steal his crown, they can steal his city, and they can steal his rations, but they cannot steal the feast in his mind. Yet, even a feast of memory has to be fought for. The darkness still presses in. The physical exhaustion is absolute. To survive the final, agonizing stretch before the shachar, the violent breaking of the dawn, David must do more than just remember.